The child was standing in the road when Marcus Hayes rode past. He almost didn't see her, just a small shape in the twilight, half hidden by the tall grass that lined the trail. But his horse saw her. The mare snorted and shied, pulling left, and Marcus had to grip the reins to keep from being thrown. "Easy, girl, easy." He steadied the horse and looked back. The child hadn't moved. She stood perfectly still, her arms at her sides, her face turned toward him. She couldn't have been more than 3 years old, maybe 4, too young to be out here alone, too young to be anywhere alone. Marcus dismounted and walked toward her slowly, hands open where she could see them. "Hey there, little one, you lost?" The child didn't answer. She just stared at him with wide, unblinking eyes, dark eyes, brown, almost black in the fading light. Her dress was torn and dirty, her feet bare and cut. Her hair hung in tangled knots around her face. "Where's your mama?" "Still nothing." Marcus crouched down to her level, keeping his distance. He'd worked with enough frightened animals to know you didn't crowd something scared. You waited, you let it come to you. "My name's Marcus, what's yours?" The child's lips moved, but no sound came out. Then quietly, so quietly he almost missed it, she whispered, "Cold." Marcus frowned. It wasn't cold. The evening was warm, the air thick with the smell of dust and prairie grass. But when he looked at her more closely, he saw the way she trembled, the way her small hands were clenched into fists, the way her skin was pale, almost gray. "All right, let's get you warmed up." He shrugged off his coat and draped it around her shoulders. It swallowed her, hanging down past her knees. She looked up at him, and for a moment something flickered in her eyes, recognition, maybe, or relief, but it was gone before he could be sure. "Can you walk?" She nodded. "Good, come on then, my camp's not far." He stood and held out his hand. The child looked at it for a long moment, then reached up and took it. Her fingers were ice cold. Marcus led her off the road and into the trees where he'd set up camp an hour earlier. The fire was still going, crackling softly in the clearing. The mare was tied to a low branch, nosing at the grass. Marcus settled the child near the fire and pulled a blanket from his bedroll. He wrapped it around her, tucking the edges tight, and then he sat back on his heels and studied her. She was thin, too thin. Her cheeks were hollow, her arms like twigs. And there was something else, something about the way she held herself, stiff and watchful, like she was waiting for a blow that hadn't come yet. "When's the last time you ate?" The child didn't answer. Marcus pulled a strip of dried meat from his pack and held it out. She stared at it, then took it slowly, like she didn't quite trust it. She bit off a small piece and chewed carefully, her eyes never leaving his face. "Good," Marcus said. "You keep eating, I'll make some coffee." He busied himself with the fire, adding wood, heating water in a dented tin pot. The child ate slowly, methodically, and when she finished the meat, he gave her a piece of hardtack. She gnawed on it like a mouse. "You got a name?" he asked again. This time, she nodded. "What is it?" She swallowed. "Emma." "Emma, that's a pretty name." Marcus poured coffee into a cup and blew on it to cool it down. "Where you from, Emma?" She pointed east, toward the darkening horizon. "You come from a town, a ranch." "House," she whispered. "And where's your mama, your papa?" Emma's face went blank. She looked down at the blanket, her small fingers picking at a loose thread. "Emma. Gone." The word was so quiet Marcus almost didn't hear it, but he did, and he felt something cold settle in his chest. "Gone where?" She didn't answer, she just kept picking at the thread, pulling it loose, winding it around her finger. Marcus watched her for a moment, then decided to leave it. Whatever had happened, she wasn't ready to talk about it. Maybe she never would be. He poured himself a cup of coffee and sat across from her, the fire between them. The night was coming on fast now, the sky fading from blue to black. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. The mare stamped nervously. Emma's head lifted. She looked toward the sound, her eyes wide. "It's all right," Marcus said. "Just a coyote, he won't come near the fire." But Emma didn't look reassured. She pulled the blanket tighter and scooted closer to the flames. Marcus sipped his coffee and watched her. There was something about her that tugged at him, something familiar, though he couldn't place it. The shape of her face, maybe, or the way she held her mouth when she was thinking. It reminded him of someone. And then, as she turned her head to look at him, the firelight caught her eyes. Marcus froze. Those eyes. Dark, deep, steady. He knew those eyes. His sister's eyes. Sarah's eyes. The cup slipped from his hand and hit the dirt, spilling. Coffee. Emma flinched, drawing back, but Marcus didn't notice. He was staring at her, his heart pounding, his mind racing. It wasn't possible. Sarah was dead, had been dead for 5 years. He'd buried her himself after the fever took her. She'd been 23, unmarried, no children. No children. But those eyes. Emma, he said, his voice rough, who's your mama? The child looked at him, and for a moment she seemed older than she was, older and sadder. Don't know, she whispered. What do you mean, you do know? Don't remember. Marcus leaned forward. Did she have dark hair like yours? Emma nodded slowly. And did she sing at night when you went to sleep? Emma's eyes widened. Yes. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Sarah used to sing every night when they were children, lullabies their mother had taught them. He could still hear her voice sometimes, soft and low, drifting through the dark. What did she sing? Emma's lips moved, and then, so quietly he could barely hear, she sang. Hush now, don't you cry, morning comes with the light. Sleep now, close your eyes, I'll be here through the night. Marcus's vision blurred. He pressed his palms against his eyes, trying to hold it together, but the tears came anyway, because he knew that song, he knew it by heart. Sarah had sung it to him when he was scared, when their father died, when the world got too big and too dark. And now this child, this little girl with no name and no past, was singing it too. Emma, he whispered, who are you? She looked at him with those impossibly familiar eyes. And she didn't answer. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat by the fire, watching Emma as she curled up in the blanket, her small body rising and falling with each breath. She'd fallen asleep quickly, like a child who'd learned to sleep anywhere, anytime. But Marcus couldn't stop staring at her, couldn't stop trying to piece it together. Sarah had died 5 years ago. He'd been there. He'd held her hand as the fever burned through her, watched her slip away, heard her last words. Take care of yourself, Marcus. Don't let the world make you hard. She had no children, no husband, no man in her life at all as far as he knew. She'd been living alone in a small cabin outside Denver, working as a seamstress, saving money to buy a shop. That was the plan, that was the dream. And then she got sick. And then she died. So how could this child have her eyes? Marcus rubbed his face, trying to clear his head. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe all dark-eyed children looked the same in firelight. Maybe grief was playing tricks on him, making him see things that weren't there. But the song, Sarah's song, how could Emma know it? At dawn, Marcus woke Emma gently. Hey, little one, time to get up. She blinked sleepily and sat up, the blanket falling from her shoulders. Her hair was a mess, sticking up in all directions. Marcus handed her a piece of hardtack and some water. We need to talk, he said. Emma chewed slowly, watching him. I need you to think real hard, Emma, about your mama. Do you remember what she looked like? Emma's brow furrowed, dark hair like mine. And her eyes. Don't remember. Did she have a name? Did anyone call her by a name? Emma thought for a moment, then hesitantly she said, Sarah. Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. What? Sarah, that's what the man called her. What man? Emma's face darkened. She set the hardtack down and pulled her knees to her chest. The bad man. Marcus leaned forward. Who was he, Emma? Don't know, he came to the house. Mama told me to hide, so I did. Her voice was barely a whisper now. I hid under the bed, and I heard shouting, and then... She stopped. Her hands were shaking. Marcus reached out and touched her shoulder gently. It's okay, you don't have to say it. But Emma kept going, her voice flat, distant, and then it got quiet, and I waited and waited, and when I came out, Mama was on the floor, and she wasn't moving. Marcus's chest tightened. Where was this house, Emma? East, near the river. How far? Don't know, I walked. For how long? Long time. Marcus sat back, his mind spinning. If Sarah had been alive, if she'd had a child, why hadn't she told him? Why hadn't she sent word? Why had she let him think she was dead? Unless she hadn't died. Unless someone had told him she died. He thought back to that day, 5 years ago. He'd ridden to Denver after getting a letter from a neighbor saying Sarah was sick. But by the time he arrived, she was already gone, already buried. The neighbor, a woman named Mrs. Calloway, had shown him the grave, had told him Sarah had asked to be buried quickly before Marcus could arrive, to spare him the pain of seeing her suffer. He'd believed it, why wouldn't he? But now he wasn't sure. Emma, he said slowly, where's your mama now? Gone. You mean she's... He couldn't say it. Emma nodded. The bad man took her. Took he? Ah, where's? Don't know, I ran and ran and ran. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and I couldn't find her, I couldn't. Hey, it's all right. Marcus pulled her into his arms, and she clung to him, sobbing. Her small body shook against his chest, and he felt something break inside him. If this child was Sarah's daughter, if Sarah had been alive all this time, then someone had lied to him, someone had kept them apart, and now Sarah was gone, really gone. And this little girl was all that was left. Don't cry, little one, Marcus whispered, his voice thick. I've got you, I've got you. By midday, they were riding east. Marcus had lifted Emma onto the mare in front of him, and she sat quietly, her small hands gripping the saddle horn. He'd wrapped her in his coat again, and she looked even smaller now, swallowed by the fabric. He didn't know where they were going, didn't have a plan, but he knew he had to find that house, had to see for himself, had to know the truth. They rode for hours, the sun climbing higher, the land stretching out flat and empty around them. Emma didn't talk, she just stared ahead, her face blank. Finally, she pointed. There. Marcus looked. In the distance, he could see a small structure, a cabin half hidden by cottonwood trees. Smoke rose from the chimney in a thin, lazy column. That's it. Emma nodded. Marcus urged the mare forward, his heart pounding. As they drew closer, he could see the cabin more clearly. It was old, weathered, the kind of place people lived when they didn't have anywhere else to go. He dismounted and helped Emma down. She clung to his hand, her eyes wide. Stay close, he said. They walked toward the cabin. The door was open, swinging slightly in the breeze. Marcus drew his pistol and stepped inside. The place was wrecked, furniture overturned, dishes smashed, a table on its side, and in the corner near the fireplace there was blood. A lot of blood. Marcus's stomach turned. He knelt down, touching the edge of the stain. It was old, dried, days old maybe. Mama was there, Emma whispered. Marcus looked at her. She was standing in the doorway, staring at the blood, her face pale. Emma, she's not coming back, is she? Marcus didn't know what to say. He wanted to lie, wanted to tell her everything would be okay, but he couldn't. No, he said quietly, I don't think she is. Emma's face crumpled. She sank to the floor and buried her face in her hands, and Marcus crossed the room and pulled her into his arms again. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. They sat there together on the floor of the ruined cabin, and Marcus held his sister's child, because he knew now, without a doubt, that's who she was, and he made a promise. He would find the man who did this, and he would make him pay. Marcus buried the woman 3 days later. He'd found her body half a mile from the cabin. hidden in a shallow ravine. She'd been there a while, long enough that Marcus couldn't tell if it was Sarah. The face was wrong, bloated, changed, but the hair was dark, the dress was simple, and when he found the small locket around her neck, the one their mother had given Sarah before she died, he knew. It was her. He buried her under a cottonwood tree, the same kind Sarah had always loved. Emma stood beside him, silent and still, holding a handful of wild flowers. When the grave was filled, she placed the flowers on top and stepped back. Marcus bowed his head. He didn't know what to say, didn't know how to say goodbye to someone he'd already said goodbye to once before. "I'm sorry I wasn't there," he said finally. "I'm sorry I didn't know." Emma slipped her hand into his. "She loved you," the child said quietly. Marcus looked down at her. "How do you know?" "She talked about you at night. She said you were brave. She said you'd come find us someday." Marcus's throat tightened. "I should have come sooner." "You're here now." He nodded, and they stood together in the quiet, the wind moving through the trees, carrying the scent of earth and flowers. They rode into the nearest town 2 days later. It was a small place, just a main street with a saloon, a general store, and a sheriff's office. Marcus tied the mare to a post outside the sheriff's office and helped Emma down. "Stay close," he said. Inside, the sheriff was sitting at his desk, feet propped up, reading a newspaper. He was an older man, gray-haired and thick around the middle, with a badge pinned to his vest that looked like it hadn't been polished in years. He looked up when Marcus entered. "Help you. I need to report a murder." The sheriff's feet hit the floor. "A what?" "A murder. Woman named Sarah Hayes. Found her body outside a cabin about 15 miles east of here." The sheriff stood slowly. "Sarah Hayes, you said?" "That's right." "And who are you?" "Her brother, Marcus Hayes." The sheriff's expression changed. He looked at Marcus more carefully now, his eyes narrowing. "You're Marcus Hayes." "I am. Though, you were dead." Marcus frowned. "Why would you think that?" "Because that's what folks said you died in a mining accident up in Montana 5-6 years ago." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "I've never been to Montana." The sheriff studied him for a long moment. Then he said, "You got proof you're who you say you are?" Marcus pulled out a folded letter from his coat pocket, the one Sarah had sent him years ago, before she'd supposedly died. He handed it to the sheriff. The sheriff read it, his lips moving slightly, then he handed it back. "All right, I believe you." He gestured to a chair. "Sit down, tell me what happened." Marcus told him everything, about finding Emma, about the cabin, about the body, about the locket. When he finished, the sheriff was quiet for a long time. "You know who did it?" Marcus asked. The sheriff sighed. "Maybe. There's a man who's been operating in this area for the past few years. Name S. Coleman Briggs. He's got a reputation for taking women, selling them, or worse." Marcus's hands clenched into fists. "Where is he?" "Don't know, he moves around. But if he's the one who killed your sister," the sheriff paused, "then he's probably long gone by now. Or he's still looking for Emma." The sheriff looked at the child, who was sitting quietly in the corner, staring at the floor. "Why would he be looking for her?" "Because she saw him. She can identify him." The sheriff's face darkened. "Then you need to get her somewhere safe." "Where?" "I don't know, but not here. If Briggs is still around, he'll find her. And you." Marcus stood. "Then I'll find him first." "That's a mistake." "It's the only move I have." The sheriff shook his head. "You're going to get yourself killed." "Maybe, but at least I'll die trying." They stayed in town that night, in a boarding house at the edge of the main street. Marcus paid for a room with a lock on the door and a window that faced the street. He didn't sleep, just sat in a chair by the window, his pistol in his lap, watching the darkness outside. Emma slept on the bed, curled up under a blanket, her small face peaceful. Marcus watched her and wondered what kind of life she'd have now. No mother, No father, just him, a man she barely knew. He thought about taking her somewhere safe, somewhere far away, but where? He had no family left, no home, just the road and whatever came next. A sound outside pulled him from his thoughts. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. Marcus stood and moved to the window. He couldn't see anyone, but he heard the creak of the stairs, heard the soft scrape of boots on wood. Someone was coming up. He crossed to the bed and shook Emma awake gently. Hey, wake up, we need to go. She blinked sleepily. What? Quiet, come on. He pulled her to her feet and moved to the door. He pressed his ear against it, listening. The footsteps had stopped. Whoever it was, they were right outside. Marcus tightened his grip on the pistol. Then the door exploded inward. A man stood in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar running down his cheek. He had a gun in his hand, and his eyes locked onto Emma. There you are, he said. Marcus fired. The shot was deafening in the small room. The man jerked back, clutching his shoulder, and Marcus grabbed Emma and ran. They burst out of the room and down the stairs, the man shouting behind them. Stop, I'll kill you, I'll kill both of you. Marcus didn't stop. He ran into the street, Emma in his arms, and headed for the mare. But before he could reach her, two more men stepped out of the shadows. Marcus skidded to a halt. They were surrounded. And Coleman Briggs, because Marcus knew now, without a doubt, that's who the scarred man was coming down the stairs, blood dripping from his shoulder, a smile on his face. Nowhere to run, Hayes, Briggs said. Marcus set Emma down behind him and raised his pistol. Then I'll die right here. Briggs laughed. You will, but first I'm taking the girl. Over my dead body. That's the plan. Briggs raised his gun. And Marcus fired first. Briggs went down. The bullet caught him in the chest, and he staggered backward, his gun clattering to the dirt. The other two men froze, hands hovering over their weapons, eyes wide. Marcus didn't give them time to think. He fired again, hitting one in the leg. The man screamed and fell. The other turned and ran, disappearing into the darkness. Marcus stood there, breathing hard, the pistol still raised. Behind him, Emma was crying softly. He turned and knelt beside her, pulling her into his arms. It's over now. But it was, because Briggs was still moving. He was on the ground, clutching his chest, blood seeping between his fingers. But he was alive, and he was laughing, a wet, gurgling sound. You think you won, he gasped. Marcus stood and walked over to him. He looked down at the man who'd killed his sister, who tried to take Emma, who destroyed everything. Why? Marcus asked, why did you kill her? Briggs coughed, blood flecking his lips. She saw me, saw what I did to the others, had to shut her up. And Emma. Loose end, Briggs's eyes flickered toward the child. Should have killed her too, but she ran. He coughed again. Doesn't matter now, you'll never keep her safe. Someone will come, someone always comes. Marcus raised the pistol. Not anymore. He pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the empty street, and then there was silence. Marcus stood there for a moment, staring at the body, and then he turned and walked back to Emma. She was sitting on the ground, her arms wrapped around her knees, her eyes wide and glassy. Marcus knelt beside her and pulled her close. Don't cry, little one, he whispered. It's over now, I promise. But Emma didn't stop crying. She buried her face in his chest and sobbed, and Marcus held her, rocking her gently, his own tears falling into her hair. They left town at dawn. Marcus didn't wait for the sheriff, didn't wait for questions or consequences. He just saddled the mare, lifted Emma onto the saddle, and rode. They rode west, toward the mountains, toward open country, toward anywhere that wasn't here. Emma sat in front of him, silent and still, her small hands gripping the saddle horn. After a few hours, Marcus stopped near a stream. He helped Emma down and let the mare drink. Emma sat on a rock, staring at the water, her face blank. Marcus sat beside her. "You hungry?" She shook her head. "You need to eat, Emma." "Not hungry." Marcus sighed. He pulled a piece of jerky from his pack and handed it to her anyway. She took it but didn't eat, just held it in her small hand, turning it over and over. "Emma," Marcus said gently, "I know this is hard, I know you're scared, but I need you to trust me. I'm going to take care of you, I promise." Emma looked at him. Her eyes were red-rimmed and tired. "Why?" "Because you're family, because your mama was my sister, and because," he paused, "because I owe it to her. I wasn't there when she needed me, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Emma was quiet for a long time. Then quietly she said, "She talked about you all the time." "What did she say?" "She said you were strong. She said you always did the right thing, even when it was hard." Emma looked down at the jerky. "She said if anything happened to her, you'd come, you'd find me." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "I'm sorry it took so long." "You're here now." "Yeah, I am." Emma leaned against him, and Marcus put his arm around her. They sat together by the stream, the water rushing over the rocks, the sun climbing higher in the sky. "What happens now?" Emma asked. "Now we find a place to live, a real place, somewhere safe." "Where?" "I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out, together." Emma nodded, and for the first time since Marcus had found her, she smiled, just a little, just at the corners of her mouth, but it was there. And it was enough. They rode for another week, moving slowly, stopping often. Marcus taught Emma how to ride, how to set up camp, how to start a fire. She learned quickly, her small hands growing steadier, her eyes growing clearer. At night, Marcus would tell her stories, stories about Sarah, about their childhood, about the life they'd had before everything went wrong. Emma listened, wide-eyed, soaking up every word. And sometimes, when the fire burned low and the stars came out, Emma would sing. "Hush now, don't you cry, morning comes with the light. Sleep now, close your eyes, I'll be here through the night." And Marcus would close his eyes and let the sound wash over him, and for a moment, it was like Sarah was there with them, like she was still alive, still singing, still holding them both. One night, as they sat by the fire, Emma looked at him. "Marcus." "Yes." "Do you think Mama's watching us?" Marcus looked up at the stars. "Yeah, I think she is." "Do you think she's proud?" "I know she is." Emma nodded, and then quietly she said, "I'm glad you found me." Marcus looked at her, at the small, brave child with his sister's eyes, and he felt something shift inside him. Not just grief, not just guilt, but something else. "Hope. I'm glad I found you too, little one." Emma smiled, and Marcus knew in that moment that everything was going to be okay. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. They found the place 3 months later. It was a small valley tucked between two mountains, with a stream running through it and a meadow full of wildflowers. There was an old cabin, abandoned but still standing, and enough flat land to plant crops. Marcus stood in the meadow, looking around, and he knew. This was it. This was home. He turned to Emma, who was standing beside him, her hand in his. "What do you think?" She looked around, her eyes wide. "It's pretty." "You like it?" She nodded. "Then let's stay." They spent the next few months fixing up the cabin. Marcus repaired the roof, Pat. He did the walls, built new furniture. Emma helped where she could, fetching water, gathering firewood, planting seeds in the garden. Slowly, the place became theirs. Marcus built a porch, and they'd sit there in the evenings, watching the sun set over the mountains. Emma would sing sometimes, and Marcus would listen, his heart aching with a bittersweet mix of grief and gratitude. One evening, as they sat together, Emma looked at him. "Marcus." "Yes." "Can I call you Papa?" Marcus froze. He looked at her, at the small, serious face, at the hope in her eyes, and he felt something break open inside him. "Yeah," he said, his voice thick. "Yeah, you can call me Papa." Emma smiled, a real full smile, and she leaned against him. "I love you, Papa." Marcus wrapped his arm around her and held her close. "I love you too, little one." The years passed. Emma grew. She learned to read and write, to cook and sew, to ride a horse and shoot a rifle. She grew tall and strong, with her mother's dark hair and her mother's steady eyes. And Marcus grew old. His hair turned grey, his hands grew rough and scarred, but he didn't mind, because every morning he woke up in the little cabin in the valley and Emma was there, and that was enough. On Emma's 16th birthday, Marcus took her to the meadow where they'd first arrived. He showed her the spot where he'd decided to stay, where he'd decided to build a life. "This is where we started," he said. Emma nodded. "I remember. You were so small, so scared." He looked at her. "But you were brave, braver than I ever was. I had you. And I had you." They stood together in the meadow, the wildflowers swaying around them, the mountains rising in the distance. And Marcus thought about Sarah, about the sister he'd lost, about the woman who'd given him this gift, this second chance. "Thank you," he whispered to the wind. "Thank you for her." Emma looked at him. "You okay, Papa?" Marcus smiled. "Yeah, I'm okay." 10 years later, Marcus stood on the porch of the cabin, watching the sun rise. He was old now, 72. His body ached in ways it never used to, but his heart was full. Inside the cabin, Emma was making breakfast. She was married now to a good man named Daniel, and they had 2 children, a boy and a girl. The boy had Marcus's eyes. The girl had Sarah's. The door opened, and Emma stepped out, carrying a cup of coffee. She handed it to Marcus and stood beside him, her shoulder touching his. "Beautiful morning," she said. "It is." They stood in silence, watching the light spread across the valley. Then Emma said, "Do you ever think about her, about Mama?" "Every day." "Me too." Emma paused. "Do you think she'd be proud of how we turned out?" Marcus looked at her, at the strong, beautiful woman she'd become, and he nodded. "I know she would be." Emma smiled, and then, quietly, she began to sing. "Hush now, don't you cry. Morning comes with the light. Sleep now, close your eyes. I'll be here through the night." Marcus closed his eyes and let the sound wash over him, and he thought about Sarah, about the little girl in the road, about the choice he'd made to stop, to help, to stay. And he knew, without a doubt, that it had been the right choice. Because this life, this family, this valley full of wildflowers, was everything Sarah had wanted for him. And everything he'd needed. Marcus Hayes died peacefully in his sleep on a cool autumn night, 2 weeks after his 73rd birthday. Emma found him in the morning, sitting in his chair on the porch, a blanket across his lap, his face peaceful. She didn't cry, not at first. She just stood there looking at him, remembering. Remembering the day he'd found her in the road. Remembering the way he'd held her when she was scared. Remembering the way he'd built a life for her, brick by brick, day by day. She buried him in the meadow, under a cottonwood tree, next to the spot where he'd told her about Sarah. She placed a simple stone marker at the head of the grave. Marcus Hayes, brother, father, hero. And every year, on the anniversary of his death, Emma would come to the meadow with her children and her grandchildren, and they would sing. "Hush now, don't you cry. Morning comes with the light. Sleep now, close your eyes. I'll be here through the night." And the wind would carry the song across the valley, over the mountains, into the sky. And somewhere far away, Sarah Hayes would hear it. And she would smile.